think the learning curve for a new special advisor is enormous, because you have to learn not just about your policy, you have to learn about your minister, and in some cases you may not know them very well before you start to work for them. I didn't when I went to work for David Blunkett, I barely knew him at all. And you have to understand how the government operates from the inside. And that is a very, very steep learning curve. And you don't get several months to learn it while nothing's happening. You get thrown in at the deep end with things that are kicking off at the same time. So I think more help can be given to special advisors right at the beginning of their time. And I think it's very important that when special advisors come on board, that they realise that they're going to have to clear the decks of everything else in their life and focus on this enormous challenge while they get up to speed. And even then, you're walking on a tightrope every day that you're doing the job, and you just have to be conscious of that if you're not going to lose your balance and fall off and hurt yourself in a fairly big way.
I'm not sure I had huge expectations, because working in opposition is completely different to working in government. And working in opposition, we were a tiny, tiny shadow team. And suddenly you walk into a government department and you have literally thousands of civil servants at your, at least at the minister's beck and call. And I didn't actually enter with huge preconceptions, and but I certainly didn't have bad views of the civil service, but I ended up 3 and a bit years later actually thinking respecting the civil service more when I left than when I started. But I didn't enter with great preconceptions, but you are walking into an enormous machine, and if you come straight from opposition, you are not very well prepared for that.
So I think what officials want from special advisors is a combination of things. They want a different perspective, so preferably from a different viewpoint, different framework. They want links into different networks, so political networks, think tank networks of a kind they might not themselves be accessing. And they want, although I think this can be exaggerated, they want people who can avoid civil servants having themselves to do political business.
I think when special advisors start in a department, it's critical that they get to know the key people straight away. That may only mean a 10-minute introductory chat with the lead officials. Special advisors shouldn't be bashful getting to know the most senior officials in the department. They want to know you, so you shouldn't feel shy about going to meet them. I think the other thing that's important for a new special advisor is not to try and run before you can walk. Don't try and pretend that you know it all. Try and avoid external people who want to pick your brains before you're ready to talk to them. Just spend some time, as much time as possible, getting to know your brief, getting to know the people you're going to be working with, and trying to understand what your minister wants to achieve. And if you put in that groundwork, you're far more likely to succeed in the medium term than if you rush at it and try and do things before you're ready to. All of them are huge jobs that require a lot of diligence, a lot of hard work, and knowing the right people to work with. If you get those things right in the first few weeks, then that's a good foundation from which to succeed thereafter.
There's a couple of ways you can try and make sure that your influence is effective on policy, as opposed to firefighting all the time. And I think probably twofold. Firstly is process. Throughout our time in government, the senior policy spads set up various horizon scanning meetings, and they'd bring people together to talk about 6 months down the line in your department, and at the centre as well, things that might be unforeseen coming down the line. And there was definite regular forums for people to come and talk about that and ask advice and make sure that they had the necessary civil service support and political support and knowledge from party working groups and that sort of thing. So process was quite important, and not perfect in the beginning. It evolved over time. Usually some cock-up had made you think about these things and improve it. And then secondly, I think the team, and this often doesn't come from the minister, but in an ideal world it would. Not everyone has to chase that same ball. Not everyone has to deal with the immediate crisis. Somebody has to keep the show on the road. And in a big department with lots of officials, that's easier than when you've got 2 special advisors or 3. But I do think there needs to be a discussion in those situations about firefighting and tomorrow's agenda and next week's agenda. And so I suppose this doesn't really help in a way, because both of them come with experience. But it's quite important And this, maybe it goes back to the maturity point, but it's quite important that you realise in the middle of all of that what's happening now will be over in 3 hours' time, and there's a whole week, month, 2 years of government left, and you need to make somebody responsible for that, and to keep somebody away from the day-to-day, which is hard for special advisors because crises are always quite sexy, aren't they? So somebody needs to be on that, I think.